16 ounces in a pound, so forth and so on. They said, to hell with this, we're going to invent our own scientific measuring system. So they created their own unit of length in the metric system. Who here knows, if you haven't taken 101, be quiet, I've taught you this in 101. Let me talk to the people who are taking this new here. How many of you know how the meter was defined? Raise your hand.
Half a body length?
No, it's not half a body length, because that would be highly variable. Some people are tall, some people are short. No one knows how the meter was defined? Well, they measured the distance from the North Pole to the equator, divided it by 10 million. Say that. And that's the meter, defined by a platinum rod, which is, to this day, somewhere in France. Okay, the meter's about 3 inches longer than a yard. And I've got this in the study packet, this sheet, which you can refer to tonight or tomorrow when you review this. So, yes, that's the fundamental unit of length in the metric system, and everything is in powers of 10. Okay, so the only number you have to memorize is, of course, 10. So here's 1. If the decimal is put right here, we have 1 or what? Single things. Okay, times 10 to the first power. 1 times 10 to the first power would put the decimal here, which is 10. How do you say 10? Everyone's talking. Deca. Okay, 10 squared is 100. How do you say 100? Hecto. 1,000 is kilo. Now, it's amazing how many people, I'm pretty sure everybody here knows this, I would hope, but unbelievable how many people off the street do not know that these big famous numbers, 1,000, million, billion, trillion, all differ by what? 1,000. Say that. The big famous numbers all differ by 1,000. So to be a, talk with me, to get a million, you need 1,000 thousands. Keep going. To get a billion, you need 1,000 millions. To get a trillion, you need 1,000 billions. Amazing how many people don't know that. Okay, what's the name for a million?
Mega.
Billion?
Giga.
Trillion is
Tera.
tera. Now let's, here's the meter, fundamental unit of length metric system, defined as I told you here. It's 39.4 inches, so it's about 3 inches longer than a yard. Okay, a kilometer or 1,000 meters is 0.62 mile, or about 2.5 times around a quarter-mile track. Or putting it the other way around, a mile is 1.61 kilometers. A million meters, or a megameter, is about 620 miles, or roughly the length of the state of California. A billion meters, or a gigameter, is about 2.5 times the distance to the moon. A typical DVD contains about 10 gigabytes of digital information. You know what a byte is? A byte is 8 bits of information. Say that. A byte is 8 bits of digital information. So a DVD would have about 80 gigabits of digital information. Did someone have a question?
So what's a bit?
A bit is a single digital unit of information. They're either the zeros or one, like typically called zeros and ones, although in a DVD they either reflect a laser or they don't reflect a laser.
Yeah.
On a hard disk, they're magnetized one way or the other, and so it's this or that, one or the other. It's a single digital bit of information, a 1 or an 0, so to speak. Either a pulse of electricity or no pulse in an electronic computer, and so forth. The 25,000 genes stored in the human genome are encoded by about 3 gigabits of genetic information. A's, T's, G's, and C's. Adenine, thymine, guanine, cytosine, nucleotides in DNA. So yeah, about 3 gigabits of genetic information in the human genome. Only 1.5% of which actually codes for protein, but that's how much DNA there is. That's 3 billion base pairs of DNA. Of course, you have twice that because you have one complete genome from the father and one from the mother. So every cell has 6 gigabits of genetic information. And then tera, or a trillion, as you know, modern personal computers like Macs now and some PCs now have hard disks that store whole terabytes of information. 1 billion. So, for example, a computer with a 2 terabyte hard drive would be storing 2 trillion bytes, or 2 trillion times 8, which is 16 trillion bits of digital information. It's just unbelievable. I'm old enough to remember the first Macintosh computer, which I used, and we thought it held a lot of information. It had 512 kilobytes. Kilobytes. So that kilo and tera, so how many powers of 10? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's a factor of what? 1 billion. 10 to the 9th is 1 billion. So modern computers hold 1 billion times as much memory as the first Macintosh computer. Now, going in the other direction, they divided the meter into tenths, of course. So here's a tenth of a meter, and it's called a what? How do you say a tenth of something? Deci. 0.1 of a meter, or 10 to the negative 1 power. And so that's a decimeter. And let's say these out loud so you memorize it. Hold your hand up, do the kinesthetics. Decimeter is about the width of my hand. Okay, take a tenth of a decimeter, a tenth of a tenth, that's 100th. How do you say 100th? Centi, which reminds you of what word? Cents, which are hundreds of the dollar. So centi means 100th. So a tenth of a decimeter, those are these small units here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Good way to think of a centimeter, it's about the width of your little finger. Say it. Centimeter is about the width of my little finger. If you take a tenth of a centimeter, that's a tenth of a tenth of a tenth, or a thousandth. And a thousandth is called milli. So that's a millimeter. And those are these very fine lines along here, 1,000 of these fine lines in this meter. And a good way to think of a millimeter is it's about the thickness of a credit card. Okay, I wrote that. Say it. Millimeter is about, come on, a millimeter is about
the thickness of a credit card.
Oh, if you go back to a centimeter is the thickness of your little finger. It's equal to 0.39 of an inch, or a little more than 1/3 of an inch. And 1 inch contains 2.54 centimeters. That's a conversion factor that you should commit to memory. So these are millimeters. So a millimeter is pretty small. Now, if we take a millimeter, right here, the thickness of a credit card, and divide it by a tenth of a tenth of a tenth again, or 1,000th, that's now 1,000th of a 1,000th, or a millionth. So that's a micrometer. And micrometers, or millionths of a meter, are particularly important in biology because individual living cells are on the order of micrometers in length. Say that. Individual living cells are on the order of micrometers in length. For example, a typical single typical bacteria, and we are going to talk about bacteria tonight. I hope to do a lab on bacteria Thursday. Single typical bacteria might be about 1 micrometer long. And see my picture here. These are what? In yellow? Micrometers. So from here to here is 1 micrometer, and see the bacteria. Small bacteria, bigger one. Just 1 or a few micrometers long. A typical animal cell, as it says here, is about what?
20 micrometers long.
micrometers long, animal cell, and a typical plant cell, shown here in green, is about 60 micrometers long. It's good to try to visualize the size in brute force of a micrometer. Picture a millimeter, thickness of a credit card. Pretend this whole meter stick is a millimeter. Okay, so here's the thickness of a credit card along here. And do to that what we did to this meter. So you divide that into 1,000 equal parts. Just try to imagine that, and that's what micrometers are. Now, if we take a tenth of a tenth of a tenth or 1,000th of a micrometer, that's a what? A nanometer or a billionth of a meter. And these are important in biology because individual small organic biomolecules, like a glucose sugar molecule or an amino acid molecule used to make proteins, those are on the order of nanometers in length. Okay, if we take a nanometer, tenth of a tenth of a tenth of that, or 1,000th of that, we now get what? A trillionth or a picometer. And picometers are important in chemistry. Well, actually a picometer is smaller than any meaningful thing in biology, really. So we don't ever have to use picometers as biologists or biochemists. I do point out here, in terms of time, that one water molecule at normal body temperature makes about 3 collisions per picometer. I mean picosecond. Or to put that another way, to invert that, a water molecule makes about 3 times 10 to the 12th. See, this is 10 to the minus 12. Or it makes about 3 times 10 to the 12th, 3 trillion collisions per second. Just at one water molecule, just at normal body temperature. And we'll talk about time scales in biology in a minute here. So you need to memorize this entire thing. Don't even dream of trying to be a scientist and not knowing that whole thing by heart. Any questions so far? I brought in an old hard disk from a computer here. Here's a hard disk with this spinning plate, magnetized little bits on it, picked up by this, arm that moves across it like this. This has got several plates stacked on top of each other. This is a pretty old one. The new hard disks are much more compact even than this. How many of you have seen a hard disk from a computer before? Yeah, okay. Now, the next thing we have to do is make sure that you can convert from one unit to another in the metric system. And we're going to go through this exercise. I need to get a wet paper towel here. Let's see. Okay, you can pull out those pages if you want. Do some exercises. Let's see, what pages are those? L2. It says in the syllabus. You can pull out L2. Yeah, L2 using the metric system. L2 is that one, isn't it?
Yeah, this
No.
one. And
L2
this
is that one?
No, this one.
What page is that one?
This one is BPL9.
Oh, BPL9 is the one I showed you earlier. Yeah, right, using microscopes, metric system, powers of 10, and cell sizes. Okay.